some hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now.
Live and local from the AM 1280 The Patriot Studios in Eagan, here is the closer, Brad Carlson.
Well, I'm back, sitting in for Brad Carlson. My name is Walter Hudson. Glad to be with you here again on AM 1280 The Patriot. We call it Intelligent Radio, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. And today is going to be fun. We're going to have a fun conversation with my guest in studio and with you if you want to join us at 651-289-4488. Here's the thing. Those of you who are familiar with me may recall that I have a background in radio. I had a radio show for 3 years, and every host has their different style, their different preferences, their different ways that they prep. And one of my quirks when I had my own show was I very rarely had guests. And part of that was just I was way too busy to organize it. Like I just didn't have time because I had this really burdensome day job that I had to attend to. And so I just didn't have time to be making phone calls and emails and trying to organize it. But the other thing is that I just I like to do my own thing. I'm just unhumble enough to be able to rant in a room by myself completely comfortably without any sense of losing my place. And I believe that the gentleman sitting across from me today benefits from that same capacity. Professor Penn, David Penn.
Walter, thank you for inviting me in today. And yes, I also can fill some time, riff it out, jazz it out. I've been spending a lot of time doing interview formats, though, lately. And you've come on the podcast, and that's been super cool. And we've had really good conversations. We're, pretty in depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to model some of that here today for folks on this air. And I imagine that there's a Venn diagram of folks who listen to the Patriot, listen to Brad Carlson, listen to Northern Radio Alliance, who also listen to your podcast, but it's probably not a perfect circle. So for those folks who don't know who you are and don't know what kind of work you're engaged in with politics and with the party, give us a brief summary.
Brief summary. Well, I would be called a community educator. I was not involved in local politics. 2020 was a kind of a wake-up call for me, and I immediately joined the party. I had a real good mentor, a guy that was the chair of was SD42 at the time. His name was Dave Kylo. Good dude, gave me a fast track, and I got redistricted down into 45, which is Alex Plekish's home area. Sat on a board with him for 2 years, rose to vice chair, ran for chair this last go-around and lost to Kathy Folk. I'm a state central delegate, and the thing that I've done is I've poured myself into a media company called Free People Radio, and that's where we met and talked for the first time. And we podcast there, and the idea there is we're searching for truth. We don't say we know the truth, but we're searching for it. And if you're interested in looking in some areas maybe that you're not, if you want to experiment with some stuff that's a little different, come on over to Free People Radio. I'm podcasting there as the Professor Penn podcast. We're across all the different platforms. Wherever you want to go get podcasts, we're there. And I actually do one with Royce White called Hebrews. You ever seen Hebrews?
I don't think I've caught that one.
Well, that one's hilarious.
Hebrews. I'm picking up what you're doing there.
You darn straight that's what we're doing. They were exploring the use of the Black and Jewish identities for different political purposes.
Right.
And so it's really, kind of deep work. Had a good dose of that yesterday.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I actually.
Well, because you did mention that you're a state central delegate. And
yes.
Just so people know if they don't, they were both, as it turns out, the Republican and Democrat parties had their state central committee meetings yesterday. And by total happenstance, this is an aside, and we'll get back to your perspective. As a total accident, I ended up at both.
Really?
So I started, of course, at the Republican State Central Committee, because I'm also a delegate, in Medina or wherever it was. And I had to leave early because my son had a really big, it was a state qualifier for his robotics team.
All right.
And that was being held at a school in New Brighton. And it just so happened to be the exact same school where the DFL was holding their state central.
Kismet.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about State Central. Let's talk about your observations from there.
Well, first of all, I want to say I was a delegate. I'm now an alternate delegate. So I was not seated this time, but I was in the room. I'm trying to make sense of what happened. I'm really trying to make sense of it. It's like politics is a system. It's like an energy system of all these human wills interacting. And I realize I'm out on point. I'm on point. And I'm looking at what's happening, and I'm going, well, where is this group of delegates at? And I'm going to tell you, they're not in a place where I'm not judgmental about where they're at. It's just not where I'm at. And what we've got is a divide in the party, and it's not hidden. And I'm about unity. I mean, we're talking. And you know what I tell my audience is real simple. And if you're listening to me, you're on one side of the football, the other within the Republican Party. But the day after the primary, and there will be a primary, unfortunately, there will be, most likely. The day after, we're just going to vote for the Republicans. I'm going to be for whoever the Republicans are. We can unify and have a conversation about clarifying our positions without being disloyal, we don't have to be ugly about it. We can be convivial and discuss things. Yeah. And I thought it was a convivial meeting, didn't you?
I did, and that's a big part of what I want to talk about with you here today. So, again, if folks want to join us at 651-289-4488, I'm Walter Hudson, sitting in for Brad Carlson, and in studio with me is David Penn, the host of the Professor Penn podcast. And did you say Free People Radio? Is that what?
Well, that's the name of the company that we record at. Yeah,
and so my plan is to have you for the full 2 hours today.
Okay, thank you.
Because we're going to get into some deep stuff. We're going to get into how party politics works from our different perspectives, because we do have different perspectives. We're cordial, we're friendly, we talk to each other, not at each other. At the same time, we don't necessarily have the same.
We try to learn from each other.
Yeah, right. We don't see things the same way because we have different perspectives, right? Like,
and I honor your perspective, and sure. I actually try to put myself in your shoes.
And so, that's why I thought you were the perfect person to bring in for what I want to talk about, which is the tension between what folks refer to as the grassroots, as opposed to what they refer to as the establishment. And like what those two things even are. Is there a firm line? Is it blurry? Are there people in between? And then also I want to dig into like the functions of how the party works. So state central committee meetings, state conventions, local conventions, caucuses, right? To explain, first of all, for the education of people who aren't involved and are politically curious, so to speak.
How about for the people that are involved?
Well, and for the people who are involved in other ways, but haven't necessarily gotten into.
There's people that are in the party for 10 years that don't know how it works.
Well,
they told me that.
That's true. So for their sake as well. But then I also want to get to what I see, because you asked me what I thought about State Central.
Okay.
Right? And we're gonna get there. But the summary, the headline of it is, I think the structural way that we operate a lot of these events contributes to the tension and the distrust and folks not getting along. And it's not intentional. It's just these are volunteer deals, right? Like very few people are getting paid. Like there's some state party staff member who are getting paid to do it. Everybody else is paying to get in the room, right? Delegates and alternates are paying to get in the room. We're all volunteers. And so, and we're operating on our individual understanding of Robert's Rules of Order and the bylaws and the Constitution and all these things, and each individual person's perspective on how all those things interact isn't necessarily going to align. And a lot of times you see from both sides of the stage, right? Like from the folks who are administering or presiding over the affairs and the folks who are the body, members of the body in the room, a fumbling, if you will, a fumbling of process that, if it's not properly administered, is going to result in people feeling like they're being disenfranchised when in reality it's just confusion. What are your thoughts on that?
I think confusion, incompetence, or evil.
I was trying to steer away.
Or evil. It really doesn't matter to me because the result is the same.
Sure.
So if I was a very evil and skilled human being, I'd find a bunch of incompetent people and promote them and then exploit their incompetence so that my true nefarious plan could never be discovered within the incompetence. It could be. I don't have any 8x10 glossies. I'm just saying it could be. I always think about what is the worst case scenario, because I'm a businessman.
Yeah.
Business people think, what can go wrong here? Well, the worst thing that could be going wrong here is the incompetence is carefully managed.
Yeah, so I personally, well, I'll dig into this story when we get on the other side of the break, because it's going to take more than the minute and a half or so we have. But what I think is so crucially important in these spaces, whether we're talking about caucus or conventions or state central committee meeting, is the basics of how it's organized and facilitated and run are really important to managing the inherent antagonism that will always be in those spaces. Because when you go to caucus, you are vying to get resolutions passed. You're vying to become a delegate to the local BPOU convention. There's candidates who have organized support for themselves for whatever it is they're seeking endorsement for. So it's always going to be combat.
Conflict orientated.
Right. On some level, it's going to be combat. So there's always going to be tension in the room and antagonism in the room. The job of the facilitators is to provide a structure for that combat to work itself out in such a way that whatever the results are, everybody walks away believing that they got the fair shake. Right?
You know, I got a quote from President Kennedy. I was alive then. Those that thwart evolution ensure revolution.
There you go.
That's President Kennedy. Pretty good, right?
That's a good thought.
He was pretty good.
All right, we're going to go to our first break. If you want to join the conversation, 651-289-4488. Were you at State Central yesterday? Have you been involved in the convention and caucus process? Your thoughts as we talk through it with David Penn, AM 1280, The Patriot. So we're talking about the party, the Republican Party of Minnesota in particular, and the way we administer it, the way we run it, the caucuses, the conventions, the state central committee meetings. We just had a state central committee meeting this yesterday, in fact, and I've been involved with the party going back to 2008, 2010, somewhere in that range, and I've caucused every year. I believe I've been a delegate to the convention every year, certainly my local one.
Do I remember correctly? Did you tell me you came in as a Tea Partier?
Yeah.
Does everybody know that about you?
I mean, I talk about it fairly often, right? Because there were a lot, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's exactly the spirit of what I want this conversation to be about. Because when I came in with a bunch of other people, many of whom their names you know. Mary Amlaw, right? Who's very, very active. She still runs a Tea Party group up in the Northern Metro. Noran Dillon, who is now a staff member for Michelle Fishbach. I think David Fitzsimmons had already been part of the deal prior, but he used to chair the Republican Liberty Caucus, this guy. And of course, now he works for Brad Finstead. There was a gal, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, and I really apologize, but she ended up becoming a state representative long before I did. But we all kind of came in together at the same time, and we didn't know anything about anything. We didn't know about Robert's Rules of Order or, how caucuses and conventions worked or any of this stuff. And we basically had to make it up from scratch. And what I mean by that is because we were doing the Tea Party thing, which was separate from the Republican thing, our Tea Party meetings in those very early days were literally just us getting together at a Golden Corral or an Old Country buffet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is a very sincere question. Because at about this time, I was in China.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently. I was living a different life. It was pre my current political orientation. So I know there was a Tea Party.
Yeah.
But I was on the other side of the football. Why did people do that? I mean, what was the impetus to organize a group outside the party? What brought people in? Now, I'm sure it's multifactorial, but what were some of the main, because I really don't know.
Well, there were a couple big driving factors, right? You're right. It's multifactorial, but there are a couple of big driving factors. I think the first was the bailout of the banks in 2008, which even though Obama gets blamed for that, recall Bush W.
That was TARP.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he had something to do with it too, right?
It was him.
Yeah. And then of course there was Obamacare, which after Obama got elected, that was a big driver as well. And those two things really shook people up. And by people, I mean people outside politics, outside the political system, because there are certain events throughout history that kind of grab people by the shoulders and shake them and wake them up, right? Pearl Harbor, 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, and the bailing out of the banks. I think those are examples of incidents that hit people personally so hard that it shook them out of their sense of trust in the institutions. So a lot of folks in each of those cases, the JFK assassination, in each of those cases, people had certain presumptions prior to the event about how their institutions worked and how much they could trust their institutions. And then after those events, that perspective completely changed. And the bailouts was one of those deals where people were thinking to themselves, what is going on here? Like I've been brought up and told that if I do well in school, I get good grades, I go to college, I get a job, I hopefully work for a good company that's going to take care of me. I work for 30, 40 years. I get a pension or a 401k or whatever. And if I'm a good citizen, I'm going to be taken care of. Like that's the basic premise. If I'm a good citizen,
it goes farther than that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can go to heaven at the end of the run. I mean, really.
Sure.
I mean, as long as we're talking about predictive programming.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And so
I'm not saying you couldn't go to heaven.
Right.
I'm just saying going to heaven is part of that whole sales pitch, isn't it? Right?
Sure. Yeah. There's a spiritual component to it, no doubt. But the other side of that coin is if I'm a good citizen, I'll be taken care of. If I'm productive, I'll get the fruit of my labor. That's one side of the coin. The flip side of it is if I screw up, if I place a bad bet, if I color outside the lines, I'm going to bear the responsibility for what I did. Like that's the basic American morality, right? And so with the bailouts, what people saw was, wait a minute, these guys don't have to follow those rules. These guys can place a bet on, the most random thing or something that's almost guaranteed to go the wrong way. And if they lose, they're made whole at my expense.
We had to pay for it.
Right.
We're still paying for it.
Yes, we are.
We just crossed over $38 trillion in debt. We're paying for it.
You got it.
And so you're saying, I just want to say back what I heard. You're saying that there was these multifactorial events and you're lingering on this TARP bailout. But you also said people came in because of the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
That's very bipartisan of the Tea Party.
Well, right.
Right?
I mean, it was.
Wasn't that the same people with wearing different hats? Because you got the bailout, which was driven by a Republican Congress and president, and then you got the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. That was under the ascendancy. That was all the political capital that Obama had for his whole 8 years. That was it.
Yeah.
But they got it done, and I think it's the same people. I'm just going to say it's the same people because I remember John McCain standing there, tall and proud, American patriot, Republican, with his thumb down.
Yeah.
Before he died, his last official act as a Republican.
Yep, we'll get to McCain-style Republicans, I'm sure, at some point in the next hour and a half as we go here. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was bipartisan. I would say it was nonpartisan. Like the people who were coming into the Tea Party movement didn't care about party labels. Now, did it tend to be conservatives? Of course. But it was, the people who had...
We had a corollary.
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street.
Yes.
So it's the same people, just wearing different hats.
Well,
more or less.
It was the same complaints with wildly different solutions, proposed solutions.
We still have the same dynamic going on today. The far left and the far right agree completely about the diagnosis. We just disagree about the course of treatment.
Sure.
That's, please.
So to bring it back to what it was like in those early days, a bunch of us would get together at an old country buffet or whatever. And in those early days, this was as my first child had been born. So I had a little bit more time on my hands than I do today. And we would get together like 4 or 5 times a week. And it was very unstructured. And it was just like airing of grievances and here's how things ought to be. And here's what I heard. And here's what I heard. And it was very disorganized, but it was passionate. And at some point, because we had all these bold ideas of we should have a convention and we should do this and we should do that. But as it turns out, as a group of people, if you're going to actually do something in an organized fashion, there needs to be some sort of structure by which to have conversations and settle disputes. That's where we just started to discover this thing called Robert's Rules of Order, right? And so we basically we didn't reinvent the wheel, but we rediscovered the wheel in terms of how to run an organization. And then we applied that knowledge as we entered into party politics to advocate for...
Because that structure was also there.
Because that structure was already there. Right. Exactly, right. And so the point I'm getting after is that the problems that we're dealing with today with folks who are frustrated by what seems like a esoteric and exclusionary process to go to caucus, go to convention, go to the state central committee meeting or whatever it is. It's opaque because nobody's explaining it to them. Nobody's telling them this is what you should expect. That is not a new experience. I had that experience in 2010, and I've watched people continue to have that experience every cycle since. And so part of what I want to do here today is start to break that down for folks so that they can get a sense of why it works the way it does, how it works, and how it should be facilitated to result in not necessarily the outcome you're personally going to like, but an outcome that you're confident was arrived at through a fair process. I'm Walter Hudson sitting in for Brad Carlson, got David Penn in with me, AM 1280, The Patriot.
Here comes winter. In winter, good tires aren't a luxury, they're a necessity for safety. At TireGet.com, getting your winter tires is quick, easy, and priced right. With TireGet.com, you order online, install right by your house, and stay safe on the road this winter season.
And we're talking about the mechanisms of the Republican Party of Minnesota in particular, and people's engagement with it from the grassroots, the tension between folks who are just getting started or are trying to navigate the process at the grassroots level and folks who you might label the establishment, the folks who are facilitating things, the incumbency and all of that, and how there are opportunities to tweak expectations, and educate people on both sides of that divide to get things running more smoothly. And, when we talk about unity, again, I think sometimes the picture that people get in their head when you talk about party unity is that we're just all going to be happy with how things turned out, right? That's not it. When you come into these spaces, caucus, convention, a state central committee meeting, people are going to have different ideas about what the outcomes ought to be, and not everybody's going to get what they want. And so you might walk out of these processes not having gotten what you want, but we can have unity in the sense of, first of all, being committed to furthering the mission no matter what, but then also in doing everything within reason to provide an environment where people feel like they were heard. I see the wheels turning.
Well, I don't know where you're going to pass off the football to me here, but I think people know they're being heard. They're being heard. There's no communication problem. What we have is a failure to accept evolution in the party. I mean, there is an establishment group. They represent a certain kind of political economy. And there's a whole other group of people that come from a different perspective on that political economy. It doesn't have to be it's acrimonious intellectually is great. It just needs to stay in that place because we're arguing about something we have to become good at talking about because the argument has always been here and now it's right in front of us. We have to solve it. We have to have principles, both sides. What are the principles of these two sides? Because they are at odds with each other, and clarify it. And here's what we need to find out. Where do our interests align? We don't have to love each other. Where do our interests align? Because I'll tell you where mine align. I don't want to be ruled by a communist government.
Right.
Right? So there has to be some evolution of our strategy and tactics so that we don't bifurcate.
Right. Yeah. The way I put it on X yesterday, I believe it was, is that there are no heroes here in terms of this process. And what I mean by that is not to disparage anybody, but just to point out that like there are flaws, not just like flaws, but also blinders of perspective, like blind spots. That's probably a good way to put it. So if you're Senate Minority Leader John Thune, right, in DC, and actually he's the majority leader because they got the majority right now. You wouldn't know it based upon how things have been going.
Great. Rim shot.
That's exact. But at any rate, you look at him, and he came out recently and he defended this blue sheet process. I forget exactly what they call it. I think it's a blue sheet. It gets into the weeds, but Trump hates this process because what it does is it basically allows any two or the two senators from a particular state to, if there's a judicial appointment, they can basically veto that judicial appointment without it going to the full body. And this is a process that's not written down anywhere. Like, it's not statutory. It's not constitutional.
It's historical. It's cultural.
It's just a tradition. Right?
Steeped in tradition.
There's no reason we should be doing it at all, right? Like, there might have been some justification for it back in 1862.
So if you get two senators that align, that's the end from the same state.
Right. Yeah. They could just say, nope, we're not going to consider
Must
that.
have something to do with slavery.
And the way that works, actually, I think it does have to do with that Reconstruction and Jim Crow and all of that, which, those aren't problems today. But regardless, what it results in is you got Donald Trump as president of the United States leading a trifecta, majority in both chambers, and he can't get his judicial appointments confirmed?
I didn't say that about slavery by accident because it's the same fight. He's fighting with the same people. He's fighting with the exact same people. And they're going to use the exact same tactics because they've been using them since the beginning of the country. Now, we have to this is when I talk about interests aligned. Interests aligned. And we have this kind of way of talking about things, in my opinion, that doesn't really capture the description of reality that we need. You ask a question, I want to answer it right now. What defines these groups? I'll define it for you very simply. There's a group of people that have decided the entire, the people who run our institutions, because of their education and their, not conspiracy, but just who they are, their worldview, they're corrupt. There's a group of a growing group of citizens, and it's on both sides of the aisle. Well, it's not on either side of the aisle. It's kind of on the periphery on both sides. But do you know 55% of Democrats now identify as socialists?
That doesn't surprise me at all.
And I'm going to tell you, those that thwart evolution guarantee revolution. And that's the situation we're in with the party. And that's where I'm at. I'm going, okay, there's some people here that are just not going to allow this to evolve. They're actually causing the revolution. They're causing it. And there's people like me that say, we don't want a revolution, we want to evolve. So there's all these people, they're being heard, but they're not being accepted.
Well, and one of the ways in which they're not being accepted is exactly what I'm talking about here with Thune, is that he is standing in the way of Trump being able to get his judicial nominees confirmed by holding up this stupid tradition in the Senate that nobody ever voted on.
He's not holding up a tradition. I know who this guy is. See, this is why people don't like me, because I know who he is. I read everything he does. I'm paying attention. See, the people who are paying attention are few and far between. I read what this guy does. I'm on the same football side overall with him.
Yeah.
But within this fight in the party, he is supporting, and there's a lot of thwarting of this semi-nationalist agenda that President Trump is still trying to maintain. And this is another thing, talking about Thune or any of these people whose lives are beyond my pay grade. I don't know what pressures they're facing. That's why we want to talk about local party politics. Why I want to talk about it. I spend so little time thinking about these people now. And I'm sorry if you're out there, Walter's an elected, Walter's in AAA baseball. Walter is a AAA baseball star. He could actually go to the big game. So he's paying attention. That's great. What I'm paying attention to, and the people that are listening here, we got to pay attention to our local neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods. If you want to beat back these communists, we got to build the same kind of connective community of people that have a set of principles. Excuse me, and that's about staying free. So we got to get people involved. My whole thing that I'm doing with the podcast is to take individual citizens and try to give them a reason to get involved in politics. And I don't care what persuasion they're from. You say, how do we do this? I'm not here to vet these people. I'm here to help them become Republicans. The process vets them. Voting. I like that. It's a little bit Darwinian, but hey, let's have it out. Let's get it on. And that's why it requires some courage. You got to get up. Get off the couch. Go to caucus. It's February 3rd. Am I correct?
I believe so.
I think it's February 3rd. And you got to bring your neighbors. And this is how we win. The whole point of the party is to get out the vote of what they call low propensity voters. The whole point of the party is to convert every person in the state to the philosophy of republicanism. Everybody. That's what we're out here. We're out for a cultural change. And we got to get out the vote. It's the 3rd, isn't it?
It is the 3rd at 7 p.m. And you can go to the Minnesota Secretary of State's website and find your caucus location. You can do that right now.
Does everybody know what caucus is that's listening?
No, and I want to talk about that when we come. Well, actually, before we go, apparently we got some callers. I was so tuned into what you were talking about that I wasn't even paying attention to the call sheet here. Let's talk to Sandy in CD6.
Hi, my name is Sandy, and let's stick to the subject of what happened at State Central yesterday. You know, Walter, you talk about people, you were a freshman at one time. I feel like I'm a freshman, but maybe we are being heard and listened to, but we are being discredited and extinguished from the party, being removed from the party. You mentioned Naran Dillon and Mary Amlaw. They're both very angry and very mean. They're mean to me. And when we say we need to unite, Professor Penn is right. There is a part of the party that is establishment and will not unite. Walter, Mike Lindell made an announcement that he was going to run. He went to a party, a Christmas party, Action for Liberty. And within, 24 hours, you jump on and you have to condemn Mike because he's, talking to Action for Liberty. There is no uniting in the party. And when we get to these meetings and we get to these conventions, it's run under the same people, the same talking heads, the same power people, and we cannot get our voices heard in the party. In fact, we're criticized when we step to the microphone.
Sandy, would you mind holding over the break so we can continue this conversation? Because I got some follow-up questions for you.
Thank you very much.
Is that we can act as translators to each other for things that other people are saying. Like sometimes I'll hear somebody say something and I'm like, I don't quite get where they're coming from, and vice versa. And the other one has the ability to put it in different words that we can understand. That's exactly what just happened with Sandy, who's still on hold, and we're going to get back to her, and David Penn. You explain to me what you heard from Sandy.
Well, Sandy doesn't understand that she's not getting her way. I'm saying she's being heard and she's being suppressed by the people that have the power to suppress them. That's cool. I mean, that's politics. In other words, there's not enough people in the room that think like Sandy. So that's caucus. That's what caucus is all about. I mean, if you're out there and you think like Sandy and you're staying home, Sandy's going to be crushed by a entrenched establishment that has a belief in a certain kind of political economy. And I understand it because I lived in that world for a very long time. I was born in the 50s. So I understand that orientation and all the benefits of it because I took those benefits for a very long time. Then one day I said, no, I don't want to do that. And I have been suppressed. And so Sandy has that feeling, but Sandy, they're hearing us. We're just being suppressed.
All right, let's bring Sandy back on. Sandy, we got about 5 minutes before we're going to have to go to the bottom hour break. And I want to explore this more. First of all, is David speaking your language, or are we just completely missing the mark?
No, I think this is just exactly what's going on because I feel like we are the minority because the establishment is so entrenched. They don't give. They don't give an inch, and we are heard, but we are suppressed. Exactly what David said.
So here's my follow-up question for you, and I don't want to get into litigating the Mike Lindell situation, although I do have something to say about that. But more broadly, what I think will be more useful is when you say that they won't give an inch. What is the inch that you're hoping they'll give?
They will get more of us. The other side, as I will call it, involved. And I want to give you an example of what happened and what I've been exploring today after what happened at State Central yesterday, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned, Walter, that you left early.
Yep.
Are you a delegate?
I am a delegate, yes.
Did you leave before the vote?
Which vote?
The gubernatorial straw poll.
Yes, I did.
What did you do with your voting card when you left?
I gave it to my congressional district chair so that it could be redistributed to an alternate.
Are you assured that it was redistributed?
Well, I didn't stick around to watch, but yes, I believe it was. I actually looked at the list and saw who the next person was in line, and it's somebody I personally know.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, sure.
Sandy, you bring up some incredible points. Incredible. First of all, what Sandy is saying is there's a lot more people that would come into the party. And I know for a fact the party doesn't want them in because it's going to change the constitution of power in the party. Mm-hmm. So let's just not mince around about that. But these are all people that are our allies. They're allies. And the second thing is What Sandy is saying is she doesn't think the vote is fair. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter if it's fair or not. It matters how she feels about it. And so if she doesn't feel it's fair, she's representing other people who don't think it's fair, which means there has to be a more transparent process so that everybody has their concerns. We're not even getting this at we're not even close to getting it at the national level. How about in our own party, if people are going to air these kind of concerns out, that we show the brotherhood and sisterhood of being Republicans and set up a vote that everybody has confidence in? I mean, that doesn't seem like a big deal.
Go ahead, Sandy.
If I can jump in here, because I will probably get cut off, but case in point, 234 people, according to the final credentials, were seated. The number of votes that were taken were, was it 336 or 236? It was 2 more votes than what was seated. And I was sitting at a door and I saw someone come in who just demanded from CD7, Tiffany Knott, that she was the director now, or the executive chair of CD7, comes in at 12 o'clock, just after 12, goes and registers and gets a card to vote. Now, Sandy Clocker is an alternate. I'm sitting in the back. I'm waiting for a card, but somebody who is late, someone who is controversial to the whole, can we talk about it? Can't we talk about it? Should we bring up CD7? Should we let them deal with it on their own? They say let them deal it on their own, and the whole executive board is all involved in it. So, when I say, the election, they have to be fair. You have to include the people that you don't like. I'm going to say it just as plain and simple as that. They don't like us. And that's exactly how I'm treated. And that's exactly how I feel.
I like you.
I very much appreciate your perspective, Sandy. I gave you as much time as I possibly could. We're coming up against a hard break.
Nice to meet you, Sandy.
And we're going to continue to talk about what you've brought up. Thanks, Sandy. So, boy, there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing I'll say is that, I can't address the veracity of any of those claims. I did have to leave in order to go to my son's robotics thing. I kind of gave the party and my family half of the day.
I had to drive my son to tennis, and I think after I left, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they pass some kind of a new rule that if you don't sign the I will not primary card, there's no data? Wasn't there something like that?
Yeah, I heard that, and that happened after I left.
Me too. You know anything about that? Seems rather significant.
It is significant. We'll talk about that and much more when we return. Dan, I promise we'll get to you at the top of the hour after the break. Anybody else wants to call in, 651-289-4488. We're going to go right to the phones, and I'll tell you who we are and what we're doing afterwards. Dan in Inver Grove Heights has been very patiently waiting. Thank you, sir, and tell us what you got to share.
Hi, Walter. Yeah, thank you so much for being there. I just want to start by prefacing this by saying that I think what I'm going to state, if it could go to the Minnesota State Supreme Court and then to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary, I think that would be a good thing for sure. And you're talking about fraud, and I think all this comes down to the fact that we do have divided government, and we have to get our elections in order to get the good people in office because these Democrats are whacked out. It's insane. So I want to start with 2 questions. Isn't it normal for nations to distinguish or differentiate citizens from non-citizens? And doesn't it water down the rights of citizens when a state or a nation intentionally does not differentiate between citizens and non-citizens? And where am I going with this? I'm going to the driver's licenses in Minnesota that intentionally do not differentiate citizens from non-citizens. This is insane. It's got to be changed. And you can't tell me that we can't differentiate citizens from non-citizens due to the fact that it's opening minorities to discrimination. That doesn't fly. And I think that this issue has to go to the like I said, the state Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court, because that can't be held valid. What do you think?
Well, first of all, the answer to both your questions is yes. Obviously, the fact that we even have a word citizen, Like that means something, right? That's a categorical.
That's the
defined term.
That's the fundamental building block of our shared community, our citizenship.
Right. And so absolutely that distinction is legitimate. And of course, we should not be allowing non-citizens to vote. Now, what's happening here in Minnesota, first of all, just say, the Minnesota State Supreme Court, good luck, right? In terms of getting them to do anything on this. U.S. Supreme Court, maybe. And this is one of the issues that I, along with many, many others, I'm sure Dan would be included in this, has been frustrated by the fact that, look, the Trump administration's done tremendously great things in a very short amount of time, but the pile of stuff, the pile of gravel that still needs to be shoveled is just so high. And this is one of those things where it's like we've got a very short window of time to do something meaningful on elections for the 2016 or 2026 midterms, and not enough is being done, in my view, on that. But just to clarify specifically what Dan's talking about, yes, under the trifecta, Democrats gave driver's licenses for all. Oh, isn't that so comforting?
And they also had automatic registration.
You got it.
When you get a driver's license.
You got it. And so I've sat in committee hearings, whether it was on the fraud committee talking to the Secretary of State's office, or whether it was some other committee where election issues were being raised, and listen to them defend it. And what they'll say is, well, look, if somebody, we're not automatically registering people who are non-citizens. We check to make sure that they're not citizens before we automatically register. And the other thing that they'll say is, well, if somebody attests to being eligible to vote, and then it's discovered after the fact that they weren't, why, we're going to refer that case for prosecution.
Dan, it's so bad. You probably know this, brother. 26 states have AVR. 26 states. I mean, it's not uncoordinated. It's a very coordinated national strategy of creating a certain kind of a environment where Dan has no confidence in his vote, therefore in his citizenship. Do I get that right, Dan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize I was still vocal.
Oh, no, you're here, man. We're talking to you, right?
Of course. Yes.
And what a terrible feeling for him.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That's kind of normal. A lot of times on talk radio, the caller asks a question and then, you gentlemen answer it. It's pretty normal on talk radio.
I appreciate you calling in, Dan. I appreciate you waiting for so long, and we'll chat with you later. We'll continue to talk about this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So my point is that their efforts to try to instill confidence in the system that they've constructed is all based on the premise that we have really good, honest people with integrity behind the scenes who are making sure that there's no shenanigans. But even if you give them the maximum benefit of doubt on that claim, which you shouldn't, even then, we're talking about a scenario where the ballot's already been cast and counted by time you get around to a county attorney theoretically prosecuting somebody for voting illegally. Now, are you telling me you believe that Mary Moriarty in Hennepin County is going to bring a prosecution against an illegal immigrant for voting? I don't believe that.
I know somebody that's out, shot somebody 4 times.
Right.
Tried to kill them, and they're out on an aggravated assault.
That's what I'm saying. This is a gal who won't prosecute people for murder.
Right.
But she's going to prosecute an illegal alien for voting when she and the rest of the local apparatus in that county, and certainly in the city of Minneapolis, are actively working to interfere with federal law enforcement and ICE. And
I think there's a lot of academics at universities that will teach their students that if these people are here, they should vote whether or not they're citizens.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Of course.
So we have a big population of young people that think it's their right to vote. And so we have a big gap here. So we're going to have to find a way to talk to each other about this. Again, interests aligning. But I'll give you a perfect place to start. We can't solve the national problem, but we could take care of Sandy's concerns in the Republican Party, and those things matter. Those things matter. It's establishing a building block, an example for our fellow citizens that we care about this. It's a great thing to build on for kind of a citizen's understanding about the importance of this issue. Because I'll bet in the Democrat Party and in the left, they want their votes to count too.
And we're going to bring the conversation back around to what to do with the Republican Party. You're listening to AM 1280, The Patriot, Intelligent Radio, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. My name is Walter Hudson, sitting in for Brad Carlson. With me in studio, the other voice you hear is David Penn, who hosts the Professor Penn podcast. You can follow him on X at Prof Penn, P-R-O-F Penn. You can join our conversation at 651-289-4488. So you bring up Sandy. Sandy was a caller in the last hour, and she had a lot of things to say about how, not only what she has observed, but how she feels about it. And I guess the most concise summary would be that she feels excluded, she feels suppressed, she feels like the establishment won't give her an inch, I think is verbatim.
That's what she said.
That she said. And so,
but can I say something
to
Sandy? They're not supposed to give you an inch. Let's get that out of our minds here now, because see, this is not realistic. And I can just say from my own personal experience in the party, you know, this is politics. Now, this is what did von Clausewitz say? He said, war was politics by other means.
Yeah.
So this is by reverse extension. It's a war, but in peaceful means.
Right.
And she's mad. They're not going to give you an inch. They're not. They're not supposed to, and I respect them for not giving me it. I respect that. And I don't care what tactics they use. We got to find a way to get what we want out of the deal. And that's the way politics work. And when we mix together like that with that kind of intensity, we're going to learn from each other. We got to engage with these people. Sandy needs to bring 10 people to caucus with her on February 3rd and convince them to be her mates and walk up through the... Maybe she's going to do that, sound like she was in the party. See, this is the thing. It's who gets... And, of course, the establishment knows this, too, because the cat's out of the bag. So now we really have to go do what? Get more Republicans. See how great this process is with the people that are pissed off at the establishment going out to get more, like up in Otter Tail. They proved that they could do it. They keep doing it. The fight goes on. So this is forcing the establishment to also go out and get more Republicans. And we're going to wake up one day and we're going to say, hey, we got a lot of new Republicans. We just got to convince everybody to let them in. Let them in. Broaden the tent. Does that make sense?
It does. And that is the impetus of why I wanted to have you in here to have this conversation. Because at some point before we get done here today on the program, I do want to get into like the technical details of how the process works and explain to people how caucus works and how the convention system works. But the one point I want to make, because something Sandy raised, I didn't address it in the moment because I didn't want to interrupt the flow of what it was that she was unpacking and sharing. But I do think it's an important thing to bring up, not just in defense of myself, but in order to illuminate a real, what I regard as a toxin in this whole process. So she brought up the fact that when Mike Lindell announced that he was running for governor, that he did so at an Action for Liberty event.
A Christmas party.
And that I went out and I said, and the way she phrased it was that I condemned him for that. That is not what I did. I did not condemn him. I didn't use the word condemn. I didn't use condemning language. I questioned the wisdom of him choosing that moment or that location to make that announcement. And the reason why is because I know there are a lot of folks who follow Action for Liberty, who adhere ideologically to the things that Action for Liberty talks about. As an organization, they are completely hostile to the Republican Party. They're completely hostile to the legislative caucuses, to the entire congressional delegation. They've been hostile to every person who's been in any role within the Republican state party, certainly the chairs. It's everything is always tear it down, tear it down, tear it down. And that is not something that can be unified around or with. And when I talked earlier about how I came in through the Tea Party, one of the names of folks who went on to do other things that I did not mention, who was coming in at that same moment with me, Jake Duesenberg. Okay. Old pals, old buddies, comrades in arms in the Tea Party, working to educate, working to activate, working to bring people in. And for a long time, he was one of the best at doing that. Him and Jack Rogers, they had their thing going. They had things going on at the Mermaid every month. They were big events, great energy, bringing people into the party like you're talking about, David Penn. At some point, there was a shift. And the shift was we're no longer interested in how we actually get the thing done. The thing being, how do we change the policy? You know, people get so frustrated about, well, what are you doing about all of this fraud? Well, I'm doing what I can in a tie in the House where I have no ability to control how my Democrat colleagues vote or what the Democrat-led Senate does or what Governor Walz does with his administration and all of his commissioners. See, if I could change one thing, and I'll talk about what I would change in the establishment in a next segment, but what I would change if I could through sheer force of will within the grassroots mindset is this idea that you elect one good person, one great human being who's just so pure and so principled and so on the ball that their election is going to transform the entire institution. That is not how it works.
You know what, though, Walter? I don't have this grand vision of this person. I have it broken down into individual behavior. I would just like the people to not lie. Just tell the truth. And if you don't know the truth, search for the truth. Don't hide the truth. You know, I just saw a thing.
We're going to go to break here, I guess.
Okay,
so
well,
we'll talk about it on the other side.
We're going to hold on to it because I'm going to talk about something I just saw from leadership.
Yeah.
We'll start there and then we'll go down the road to where you want to get to.
Sounds good.
All right.
Walter Hudson in for Brad Carlson, David Penn in studio. This is AM 1280.
TireGet.com, where convenience meets the road. Why make buying tires complicated? With TireGet.com, it's simple. TireGet.com, one site, a few clicks, and the tires of your choice are shipped to an installer right by your house.
All right, we're going to have to rein in this conversation if we ever plan to get to talking about
nuts and bolts.
The nuts and bolts of
nuts
how the
and bolts. We got to get that in there because this whole thing, if you're not a party insider, we want you to come into the party. I do. Go ahead, Walter. You tell. Because, you know, I'm always busting on the people that are elected. I want people that are elected to provide generalship and every time step up to the mic. So please, you wrap it down.
Well, first of all, AM 1280, The Patriot. My name is Walter Hudson, sitting in for Brad Carlson. The other voice you hear is David Penn, the host of the Professor Penn podcast. We've been talking about for the entire show today. We've been talking about the Republican Party, the dynamics within it, how it functions, the tension between grassroots and establishment, and whatever other designations you want to come up with. We're going to pivot into what the process actually looks like, and then ideas for improving it. Right. So, if I'm going to assume that you don't know anything at all about what a caucus is, how it works, the path from caucus to local convention to congressional to state, and so we're just going to explain it from the ground up. All right.
The most important person in American politics is a citizen in their own precinct. This whole thing about focusing on the federal government in international affairs, this is all a scam. It's a psyop to get you away from doing the thing you really need to do, which is self-govern in your neighborhood. Yeah. And if we did that, we wouldn't have these other problems, would we?
And it literally is your neighborhood. So you use the word precinct. That's one of those words that's taken for granted that everybody knows what we're talking about.
It just means your neighborhood.
It just means your neighborhood. Now, is it a line on a map? Yes, it's defined, but it basically is your neighborhood, right? And so one of the things that happens when you go to caucus, which again is February 3rd, 2026, 7 p.m., you can find out where yours is going to be by going to the Secretary of State's website and using their caucus finder. I'm sure the party has a caucus finder as well. What'll happen when you go there is, once you sign and you sit down, the meeting gets started, there'll be somebody who's volunteered to preside over it. That person, and you can accept that or you can vote somebody else in, right? Their job is just to facilitate the will of the body.
They've got a script.
And they do have a script.
They have a script, and
Absolutely.
their job is to get you in and out within an hour without any problems. And here's what they're going to ask. They want your information, and I'll tell you why the Republican Party wants your information. Well, let me tell you. Let me be completely frank about it. Not necessarily. But the idea is when you put your information in there, somebody is going to call you immediately and welcome you into the community of people that ascribe and live with a philosophy of republicanism. We have to build a community. Now, this has not happened, and I'm here to be a critic, but, I try to do this myself. When you go to caucus, and this doesn't matter where in the state you are, and I'm going to say this to the BPOUs, the basic political operating units, the committees, we got to call these people immediately and get together with them and welcome them in and not vet them one way or the other. And then about being vetted, let me tell you the dummy mistake I made, because I came right in after 2020. And as experienced as I was, I wanted everybody to know what I believed. Don't do that. It's unnecessary. Just say I'm a Republican who wants to elect Republicans, and then show up, and guess what? It's a democratic organization. We vote. And when there's 50 people in the room and people are voting, they can't figure out who everybody is. Just come in and vote whatever you believe and get educated. So we want people in the party, and they come in on caucus, which is February 3rd, and the party's supposed to call you because you attended caucus and you join our community. And that's the most important part of the process that we need to work on, I think, as a party, is creating a community. People actually caring about each other. And why do we have to care about each other? Because we're under threat. I mean, this is really where we're at today. Walter was just talking about a voting system which encourages non-citizens to could potentially vote. And it's the same way in 26 states. And we're going to sit here and play patty cake about it. No, it doesn't matter if it's working or not. We have to assume it's not working for us and get into politics and change it. And when we come into politics en masse, and it doesn't matter what kind of citizen you are, and what do we want? We want things in common. Authenticity. And you become a delegate, and you get to say who the party endorses, and you get to look for the people that you think are authentic and honest. And that's how we take a country that's $38 trillion in debt and balance our budget and save our republic in your neighborhood. That's the place where it's supposed to go down. It's not going to happen on Fox News. It's going to happen when you get off the couch and go. And so I'm asking you to please do that on February 3rd. And I'll help people. If you want to get in touch with me, we're trying to help people. We're holding a meeting January 7th, Wayzata Central Middle School. You're invited. Wednesday, January 7th. If you're interested, we're going to talk about caucus. It's about a month before. If you're interested, come on over there. We'll talk about, and you don't have to be nervous about it because everybody's just like you. Don't know what's going on. Don't worry about not knowing what's going on. Nobody knows. But I'll tell you how it goes. Once you do it a while and people really welcome you into a community and we do it that way, hey, what are we working on? We're working on taking our state back from communists. I digress.
Well, so you talk about building a community. That is a huge missed opportunity in this process. And you spoke to it as to what it could look like. One of the things that happens when you go to caucus, one of the votes that takes place is the election of a precinct chair, precinct vice chair, precinct secretary, precinct, what am I thinking of? I don't know if they do treasurer and all that. But my point is that I've been elected as precinct chair, I don't even know how many times. And I remember the first time that I got elected as a precinct chair, I imagined that was going to come with some kind of a responsibility and accountability and expectation. I was going to be getting phone
Never
calls.
got called again. They never called you, did they?
Never heard a thing from anybody.
Okay, great.
Right?
Okay. Now, hey, wouldn't it be great as an elected official if the party really had your back? Wouldn't it be fantastic? I mean, and we all started the unity of hard work. You know, this is work. Politics is work. Okay. Don't complain if you're not doing the work. I respect all the elected representatives, if I agree with them or not, because these people are laying their lives on the line potentially, which we know here in Minnesota. It takes a lot of bravery to do it. It doesn't take quite as much bravery to show up for caucus. You're showing up in your neighborhood. But I want to say one other quick comment about community. Community. You know, most of us don't know our neighbors, but I'll tell you something that's pretty darn cool. Every Thursday night, 7 p.m., there's a community of Minnesota Republican citizens and also probably not Republican citizens. It's called Minnesota Speaks. It's every Thursday night at 7 p.m. This is where we can get together for community and talk
and this
to
is
each
on
other.
X, by the way.
It's on
Twitter.
X Spaces.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then I've started this monthly peer-to-peer meeting at the Wayzata Central Middle School. Every month we're going to do it because we have to have a place to go meet. So we got this digital community that's working on X every Thursday night, 7 p.m. on Access Spaces, Minnesota Speaks. And now we have a companion peer-to-peer once a month. This is how we build a community of citizens. And we're not going to sit around and wait for anybody to organize us. We're going to get organized. And then guess what? They're going to show up and they're going to say, wow, we got to deal with these people. And then what, Sandy, if you're still listening, then they're not going to ignore you.
Well, you won't. They won't be able to.
That's correct.
Right?
I mean,
that's
the way it is. And we're not doing this to be mean. We're doing this to do politics.
Well, and this is, you and I have talked about this before on your show. David Penn is the host of the Professor Penn podcast, which you can find online, YouTube, X, what have you.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And we've talked about this before, that the expectation that people have that they're going to be, it's funny because people complain about leadership or the lack thereof, but the fact of the matter is that leadership doesn't have to be assigned, right? Like, you don't have to obtain a role in order to be a leader in your community. You just have to lead. You just do the thing. And the example that I point to that I think most people can understand is Donald Trump, right? Trump isn't asking anybody permission for anything. He's just doing it. That when he came down that escalator and he went up on that debate stage, he wasn't listening to consultants or trying or like getting the temperature of the room or any of that stuff. He was just saying, this is what I think. This is what I think. This is what we should do. This is how we solve the problem. And the boldness of just being willing to move forward created this center of gravity that drug everybody, including me, along with it in directions that we weren't comfortable going.
You want to know why, though? Because business people solve problems. Politicians live off them.
We'll be back. How are you going to make a difference within the Republican Party of Minnesota? How are you going to make a difference, period, right? Because there's this sense of us being so small in the face of all the grand things that are taking place around us, whether you're talking about billions of dollars in fraud or you're talking about international policy, war in Ukraine, things going on in the Middle East or whatever the case may be. But what can little old you do to make a difference? That's what we're talking about here today on AM 1280 The Patriot. My name is Walter Hudson, filling in for Brad Carlson. With me in studio is David Penn, the host of the Professor Penn podcast, which you can find on YouTube and wherever fine podcasts.
Rumble and iHeart. You know, on that podcast, we talk a lot about strategy and tactics, and I really try to keep it. We talk about international stuff and historical stuff and religious stuff. That's the entertainment part.
Yeah.
Because you got to build an audience. But it's really about making an army. That's what I'm really about, is finding the people that want to use that. You talk about another place, a community place to meet. I'm not saying everybody's going to agree with me, and I don't expect them to. For the people that do agree with me, I'm trying to organize strategy and tactics. I'll give you a perfect example. At State Central, I told a bunch of people, because I know if I go up to the mic and make a motion, I just lose just because it's me. So if I have a good idea, why wouldn't I send a proxy? And I told a bunch of proxies, go up to the mic and make a motion. I make a motion that all the money the Republican Party has between now and February 3rd goes into advertising for caucus. Geofence these districts where we need more people, hit the major interstates with billboards and spend some money, and let's build out the party. See, that's a strategy. Build out the party. The tactic is spend some money on doing it. So, I mean, I wanted, and I gave it to a bunch of people, but nobody wanted, this is the suppression part. We're so interested in taking a browbeating, we've lost the we've lost the whole point of State Central, which is to talk about strategy and tactics. We're fighting with each other. That's such a convenient way to never craft a new strategy and tactic to win in Minnesota, which is what we want to do. All of us. Walter, don't we all want to win?
I would like to think so.
I want to win.
And again, not to bring it back up, and I don't want to dig into it or derail us, but that, to me, that is the distinction. Like when I get criticized for being critical of certain organizations or folks who are involved in the process, the dividing line between where I'm at and where I perceive they're at is that I actually want to win, and not just win electorally, but ultimately be able to get the policy.
Can I just share with you?
Yeah.
I watch it. I don't know what caused this beef. I don't know. You just told me you and Jake were buddies back in the day.
Yeah.
There's nothing like two buddies getting pissed off at each other. That'll last a lifetime if you're men. But also, if you're men, you should be able to sit down and heal it for the good of the movement. I'm just saying for me personally. I sit down with people all the time. I don't like them personally, but it's not personal. Let me finish, please. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying it would be cool if you could do it for them too. And
I agree.
And I'm going to tell you, I have good relations with the people over there. There's no bad blood.
Sure.
But they don't work with me. I mean, they're doing their own thing, and I get that. And I'm doing my own thing. Somebody just called me a grifter. I'm not on the grift. I'm a negative grifter. So, these people need to understand there's folks, I respect what they're doing. I'm trying to respect it right in your house, but I'm saying we're all contributing in some way to a dialogue in the party. They've got a principle, they're holding it. Now, it could be a kamikaze hold. Maybe I present something like a little bit, okay, let's not sit and argue. Let's all just get in there and vote. See, and I think maybe that is what I want them to do. And I want every elected official, and you go to caucus, and here's what happens. You get elected as a precinct delegate. Yeah. And right away, a month later, you're going to be called upon to go to your Senate district convention.
Right.
Now, this is cool. Now, this is the whole Senate district area. So I live in SD 45. Happens to be Alex Plekish's home district. I fit in there just wonderful. But we all go to the convention, and then you can emerge from your precinct and run then to be a Senate district delegate. And boy, if you get that one, you're in the game now. You're actually the most important person in the United States of America. You're vetting out who your party endorses to be the candidate of the party. That's a big time deal. You might go to the next step. You might become a person who actually starts going to stuff because it's a responsibility. You go to Minnesota Speaks on Thursday night. You got weight. You're in the game. And then you can encourage other citizens to get in the game. That's what we want to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
What you're talking about is relationship building.
Sincere relationship building.
And I love the modifier, sincere relationship building. When you talk about the potential for reconciliation between somebody like myself and somebody like Duesenberg, that is the fundamental incapacity, is I can't build or mend a relationship with somebody who does not sincerely want to have one. And I'm not just saying that. That's not just my perception. It is built into the business model of what they do. They engage in something called confrontational politics.
Fackle.
Yes. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And a fundamental tenet of that business model is we don't want a relationship with you. We don't want to be your friend. We don't want to work with you. We're against you. We're against you. We're against you until you do whatever it is that we come up with.
Can I modify this strategy? If you tell the truth or you're searching for truth and you're willing to say you're sorry when you're wrong, I don't need you to agree with me. I just need you to search for truth. I'm not an absolutist, but I'll tell you where Fackle's 100% correct. If you're doing your politics on a lie, you need to be confronted. And that's why people don't like me.
Oh, sure.
So I'm a modified Fackelite in the sense that I will call out liars. I mean, I can see it. And I'll always say, I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure because I'm not in your head. But then I'm not stupid. So don't treat me like I'm stupid.
Right.
But hey, the other part of people are being honest, and we have an honest ideological divide in the party. It can be made honest. And as soon as we define both sides and quit fighting and define those principles, we're going to have to figure this out. I mean, really, I know what the principles are. I know what the divide is. There's people and Trump, not to get too far into the rabbit hole of the international, but I know what he's doing because I'm in the political economy. He's just said, yeah, okay, if that's the way you want it, we're going to run it. This globalism thing, forget about it. Now it's back to the way it was. The United States is great. We're back. We're running it. So we're going to have a lot of Republicans that support that, particularly boomers. But that business model is leaving our young people destitute. And they're not, this whole thing about, they're conservative. I don't know what polls you're looking at, but please keep looking. Because young people are socialists, because we are not remembering what it is to be a Republican.
Well, so you modified FACL, which I appreciate that modification, and I would agree with it. Let me modify your analysis there of where the young generation is at, because I think this is important to talk about, is that they are conservative to a point. Like, they're conservative on the social issues. They're heading in that direction. They're done with the woke stuff. They're over it, having their police speeched and having to virtue signal and all that. Economically, they are adopting redistributionist principles, socialist principles, right?
Because they don't, why not?
That's exactly right. Because why not? From
Right.
their perspective, what do they have to lose? They see, like we talked about me getting involved in the Tea Party back in the day. The same thing that I was upset about then, the fruits of that is what they are growing up in and dealing with the consequences of now. So everything we were concerned about back in 2010 has now become the reality for an entire group of young adults who are trying to make something in their lives, and they see
a corrupt oligarchy.
They see a corrupt oligarchy, and they see this painted Rockwell vision of a white picket fence and a family with 2.3 children or whatever, and they say that in a house, that's never going to happen for me. For 50 different reasons, that's never going to happen to me. And so if somebody comes to them and says, I'm willing to take care of you, I'm willing to provide you what you need, and here's the deal, I'll provide you what you need, and I won't tell you that you need to use they, them pronouns. That's the sweet spot right now. That's where politics is headed. It's headed to, so it's kind of an inverse of what it once was, right? There used to be fiscal conservatism and social liberalism was the thing. Now it's going to be social conservatism and fiscal liberalism. That's the direction
they're going to put everybody on the payroll.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That's exactly right.
But when you do that, you just have to remember, if you have children out there, they're not going to live very good. I mean, you just can't make it work when you make everybody communist.
Yeah.
It's not a very good life for our children. That's what we're fighting.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to go to break just a little smidgen early here. And when we come back, we've only got one segment left, so we got to try to cram a lot into that one segment.
Okay.
But this is not the end of the conversation. Like, we're going to continue, and you might not hear it over this air, but if you follow me on X at Walter Hudson, if you follow David Penn on X, Prof Penn, there's going to be more conversations about this, and there's going to be trainings and training materials as to how to get involved and how the process works. So we've been dancing around stuff and interweaving a lot of different topics, and I love doing that, this long form conversation style. But there's one thing that I definitely want to hit in this last segment before we're off the air, and that is what I view as the indispensable importance of how these caucuses and conventions and meetings are facilitated, organized, and operated. Because if you have chaotic registration process, right? Chaotic seating processes, chaotic parliamentary procedure. If there's chaos in how the thing operates, that's where you're going to get stories like Sandy's from last hour, where she's saying, I think there was something fishy going on here because I saw this and I saw that, and I wasn't certain of this, that, or the other thing. And when we talk about transparency, it's not always a willful obstruction or like obscuring of what's going on. It's just the lack of clear communication as to what is happening and how it's happening so that people can keep their eyes on it. And I'll give you an example. So everybody has their inner parliamentarian inside them that they love to look at how things are being done and judge it and say, I would have done this instead of that. I got one of those inner parliamentarians in me. I actually got to use him, bring him out and play with my inner parliamentarian in 2024 when I chaired an endorsing convention down in the Lakeville area, where it was a very highly contested endorsement race between a up-and-comer, a challenger, and an incumbent. And there was a lot of drama that I won't go into going into this convention. And I knew that. I knew I was going to be walking in to a lot of heat and a lot of tension and people ready to get at each other's throats. And so the reason why I said yes when I was asked to chair this is because I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly what to do in order to get that room calmed down and in order. And what it is, it all comes down again to the facilitation, right? You go slow. You explain what's happening. You repeat what the order of business is.
Let me give you another one. You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
You're a salesman for Republicanism. You have to be likable.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Because sometimes when people, and I've seen this with presiders over our meetings in the past, especially conventions, that if the person is frustrated, the presiding officer, the chair, is frustrated by what they perceive as the ignorance of whoever is raising a motion, and they visually show that or express it in their tone of voice, it's death to trust. It's death to trust.
And it doesn't really happen at caucus. So if you're thinking of coming out for the first time for caucus is just like your neighbors. It's cool. Where it happens is at conventions because it becomes a control thing. So that just makes people turned off. Let's just all treat each other nicely. When it's faced peer to peer, I think that's really important. You are a salesman for Republicanism. If you're taking a caucus room, be friendly. I think that's a big deal. Am I wrong about you? No. You agree with me?
Well, absolutely not. Like you said, we're trying to build relationships here that starts with a smile and a tone of voice, right?
And I also want to say, everybody that goes into politics knows we're using each other almost all the time. But if you are of goodwill and you're honest with people, you might make some wonderful friends in politics. That's really what this is about. If it's up to you, it's up to me. If I maintain my dignity, if I maintain my center, and I'm honest with people about what I feel, and I make I statements all the time, I could make some really good friends.
Yeah.
And that's a cool part of it. Really, that is really a cool part of it.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. There is a social aspect that is a part and parcel of this work that we do within the party.
Well, you misunderstand me. I didn't mean for social. I mean to form the army.
Oh, gotcha.
You got to have some people you can depend on.
Comrades in arms.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. There we go.
So again, I just think it's so important. Like in that particular experience where I knew there was going to be a lot of tension, I knew there were going to be a lot of points of order and points of inquiry and attempts to address the rules and whatever the case may be, rather than being frustrated by that, rather than trying to push through it with parliamentary maneuver. It's like, nope, we're going to take everything in turn. I'm going to make sure I understand what the request is, what the motion is. I'm going to make sure everybody else understands what this guy's talking about, what this gal's talking about. And then we're going to have discussion on it and we're going to take a vote. And would you know, by God, everything just went smooth.
So your theory of the case is that contributing to this gap, no, let me say it the other way. One of the things, your theory of the case is one of the ways to lessen this tension is to have a better parliamentary process at the convention.
To execute the parliamentary process not only correctly, but respectfully. So
so it doesn't feel like a weapon.
Right. Like the role of the facilitator of a parliamentary process, whether you're talking about a mayor.
Convivial.
Well, yes, it is to make sure that the will of the body is expressed. In order for the will of the body to be expressed, the body has to know what the hell's going on, right? Like they have to understand what it is that.
Well, of course, what the people are going to say, and this is my responsibility, they're going to say, we don't know the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So then people go out and they try to learn some of the rules, which they're not experts.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you find out, sometimes rules get broken, but not in your favor. And my comment on that is, quit your complaining. That's politics. We're going to have to figure out when we do this how it's going to work. And if more people come in, it's going to be easier to do. Go ahead.
Well, we got to wrap up, but yeah, I mean, there's so much more to be said about this process and about how parliamentary procedure and all that works. And we're going to be providing that content, not necessarily on this era, but if you follow me at Walter Hudson on X, at Prof Penn on X, I know you're doing your own thing. I'm probably going to be doing some of my own thing too, but I imagine we will be coming together with some other folks, by the way, in the Republican
building the
orbit.
digital community. Let me just say this, though. I have 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If you go on X and you follow Walter and you follow me at Prof Penn Podcast, for example, and you start hanging around with this Spaces on X on Thursday at 7 p.m., Minnesota Speaks, and we start to build a big digital army of Republicans, we'll bust the algos. See, right now we're all held down, every one of us. Suppressed. Oh, not on X? Oh, yeah, right. Sure. Hey, let's get some more energy going here because we don't have that much time to convince people to come to our principles. Let's do it. That's what this thing is about, strategy and tactics. That's the ultimate thing. That's what I want to come back to talk about, strategy and tactics.
Final word goes to Professor Penn. David Penn, thanks for coming in studio and spending the whole 2 hours with me on a Sunday on short notice. My name's Walter Hudson, sitting in for Brad Carlson. It's been great being with you here over the past couple of weekends. I'm sure the opportunity will present itself again. Brad does have a life, after all, as does the rest of the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Again, Walter Hudson, AM 1280, The Patriot.